I taught a little country school near Brownville, which, as everyone knows who has had the good luck to live there. Brownville has some of the finest views in the state of California. Brownville was a small town with many beautiful hills. Many visitors stayed there in the summer. They came to Brownville to improve their health. I lived in a boarding house where many visitors also stayed. The school was not far away. It was on the other side of a hill. The distance by road was about 1.5 miles, but I knew a shorter way. I could walk over the top of the hill in 15 minutes. There was a path that ran through the forest on the hill. By this path, I was returning one evening later than usual. It was the last day of the term and I had been stayed at the schoolhouse until almost dark. I was preparing a report for the school. I was on my way when I found a lizard. I sat upon a fallen tree to observe it. As I was sitting there, I saw some shadows. Suddenly I heard voices. One was a woman's voice, and she sounded angry. The second voice belonged to a man. It was a deep and musical voice, the voice of a singer. I could not see who was speaking, but I could hear the words clearly.
Don't threaten me. You know you are powerless. Let things remain as they are, or you shall both suffer for it,
said the man.
What do you mean?
This was the voice of the woman, a cultivated voice.
You would not murder us.
Their man did not reply. I looked into the woods, hoping to see the man and the woman, but I saw no one. After some little time I saw them, in the moonlight among the trees. The man was tall and slim, dressed in black. The woman wore a gown of gray color. Evidently they were still unaware of my presence. But for some reason they spoke in lower tones and I could not understand what they were talking. As I watched, the woman knelt on the ground in front of the man. She held her hands together in front of her face. Was she begging for the man's help? Or was she praying that he would not hurt her? I did not like this scene. There was trouble here. I stepped behind a large tree. After some time, the man and the woman disappeared. I went home, somewhat disturbed in mind. I was not happy about what I had seen. It was all very strange. I did not like it. At the breakfast table in the boarding house, the next morning there was a new face. Opposite to me sat a young woman. This girl soon got my attention by the sound of her voice, which was like the one I heard in the woods. A moment later another girl, a few years older, entered the room and sat at the left of the other, speaking to her a gentle, "Good morning." The two young women looked very similar. And they were both extremely pretty. Evidently enough, the two were sisters. I finished my coffee and left the dining room quickly. As I passed out of the house into the grounds, I heard a rich, strong male voice singing Rigoletto. I didn't see him. I walked away rapidly. When I returned to the boarding house later, I saw the elder of the two young women standing near her, a tall man in black clothing, the man whom I had expected to see. The singer was talking easily to the younger woman. I guessed that they knew each other well. When I came into the garden, he stopped talking and turned around. He looked straight at my face. The man was not young. I guessed that he was about 50 years old. The man was wearing very expensive clothes. A second later, the man and woman had disappeared. They seemed to have a trick of disappearing. As I entered the boarding house, I saw my landlady. So I asked her about the new guests. She told me that the two girls were Pauline and Eva Maynard of San Francisco. The elder was Pauline. The man was Richard Benning, their guardian. He has taken care of the girls since their father died. Mr. Benning had brought them to Brownville in the hope that the mountain climate might benefit Eva, who was ill. Soon, when the girls were 21, they'll have their father's money. Mr. Benning took very good care of the two girls. He spent a lot of money on them and on himself. But maybe he was spending their father's money. It was now my summer vacation. I did not have to go back to the school for several weeks. I walked on the hills and enjoyed the views and the fresh air. I often met Richard Benning and the two girls walking on the hills too. They seemed to be very happy together. Then I remembered the strange words that I had heard one of the sisters say. "Do you mean that you'll murder us?" Why had Eva Maynard said this? A month went by and I had almost stopped thinking about the Maynard sisters. But one day something very horrible happened. This was the death of the elder girl, Pauline. The sisters had occupied the same bedroom on the third floor of the house. Waking in the gray of the morning, Eva had found Pauline dead beside her. Later, when the poor girl was crying beside the body, Mr. Benning entered the room and tried to hold Eva's hand, but she pulled it away. She stood up and cried out.
"It is you!"
She said.
"You have done this! You!
She's upset,"
he said in a low voice. The man took her hand and put his arm gently about her shoulders, as if to support her. Suddenly she burst into tears and clung to him as a child to its mother. He smiled and led her silently out of the room. A few days later, there was an inquest in Brownville. The coroner listened to the words of Benning, a doctor, and several people in the boarding house. Then he wrote these words on Pauline's death certificate, "Cause of death, heart disease." They thought that Pauline had died suddenly because her heart was weak. Benning sent for an undertaker from San Francisco. The undertaker took Pauline's body back to the city, and she was buried. Neither Benning nor Eva went to the dead girl's funeral. Many of the people of Brownville thought that this was wrong and strange. One evening about a week after the death, I went out upon the veranda of the hotel to get a book that I had left there. Under some vines, I saw Richard Benning and Eva Maynard. They were holding each other's hands and looking into each other's eyes. It was a very gentle and romantic scene, but it was wrong. They looked like lovers. Benning was a 50-year-old man and Eva was not yet 20. Also, he was her guardian. Benning should be like a father to the young woman, not a lover. I stood in the shadows and they did not see me. I did not move, but I listened.
You will take my life.
She said.
I know you killed Pauline. I know your intention as well as I know your power. I beg you to kill me quickly and let me be at peace.
Richard Benning did not reply. He released Eva's hand and walked away. He walked up the hill to the forest where I had first seen him. As he walked, he sang. I walked out of the shadows. Eva turned and stared at me. Maybe I had frightened her. Miss Maynard, I said, I beg you to tell me who that man is and the nature of his power over you. I know this is very rude, but when a woman is in danger, any man has a right to act.
You can do nothing,
She said. I took hold of her arm, gently shaking her as one shakes a person falling into a dangerous sleep. You must wake up, I said. Something must be done. You have said that that man killed your sister, and I believe it, that he will kill you, and I believe that. She merely raised her eyes to mine. Will you not tell me all? I added.
There is nothing to be done. I tell you, nothing. We shall be here only 2 days more. We go away then. Oh, so far. I ask you to be silent. You mustn't talk about anything that you've seen or heard here.
But this is madness, girl. I said. I'm sure that you're in danger. I must tell the police. Eva woke up a little when she heard this. Her expression changed. She became cold and polite.
This is my business, not yours,
She said. It concerns every person in the country, in the world, I answered, with equal coldness. If you had no love for your sister, I, at least, am concerned for you. But your sister died here in Brownville, I said. And she died suddenly. Now you are in danger. The people of Brownville might be in danger too. You must tell me what happened. Didn't you love your sister?
Listen,
She said, leaning toward me.
I loved her, yes, God knows. But I love him more. You have heard a secret. If you talk about it, I'll say that your words are lies. Do you think your authorities will believe you?
Suddenly she smiled. It was a beautiful, sweet smile. I could not believe her words. They were so hard and cold. I was in love with her. Eva held my hand tightly.
Come with me.
She said.
We'll walk together. He will be away all night. He won't know that you've been with me. We'll walk and talk. And you'll forget what you've seen and heard. You'll forget about us.
We talked about the people of Brownville. And we talked about their love of gossip. I did not want to go to my bed. Before we parted, I took a promise that she would walk with me the next afternoon to the old mill.
If he's not here, yes. I'll walk there with you,
said Eva. Next day, Eva was not in the dining room at lunchtime. Eva came into the garden. We went slowly up the road that led to the old mill. She was apparently not strong and at times took my arm. Arriving at the mill, she did not stop. She crossed an old wooden bridge and took the path up the high hill. It was the path to a place called the Eagle's Nest. This was where the path ended, on a cliff high above the forest. The view from Eagle's Nest was beautiful. I was a little afraid. The view was fine, but I did not like to go near the edge of the cliff. But Eva stood on the cliff's edge and looked up, not down. Suddenly I heard footsteps, and Richard Benning came and stood beside us.
I saw you from the road,
he said.
So I came up.
Eva turned toward us. She still stood on the edge of the cliff. Her eyes were shining and she was smiling. There was a look of love on her face.
I am so glad you came,
she said, giving him both her hands. She was staring at Benning. Her loving expression showed that she was telling the truth. But then I saw something else in her expression. She was afraid of Benning. With a smile on her lips and fear in her eyes, Eva stepped backward. She fell over the edge of the cliff to the ground below. How and how long afterward I reached the place I cannot say, but Richard Benning was already there, kneeling beside the dreadful thing that had been a woman.
She is dead, quite dead, he said coldly. I will go to town for assistance. Please do me the favor to remain.
He rose to his feet and moved away, but in a moment had stopped and turned about. Benning started to walk toward Brownville. Then he turned and looked at me.
You saw what happened,
he said carelessly.
It was an accident. Eva killed herself. I saw her step off the edge of the cliff, and you saw it too.
His manner maddened me. You are her killer, I said. You killed her. He shrugged his shoulders without reply and, turning, walked away. As he walked through the forest, I heard him singing La Donna e Mobile from Rigoletto.